You and I with Rashmi Shetty is a human library audio podcast bringing in stories of people you and I can draw inspiration from. Welcome to the third season of this amazing story listening journey. Ordinary folks, extraordinary lives, their uniqueness and individuality, making them interesting to talk to and to listen to. Each one of them completely connected to the voice in me and with motivational stories of moving beyond themselves to make a difference in the world. A reaffirmation of the fact open your eyes wider. The world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. To commemorate Earth Day, we have a special episode today. Our guests are Dr. Josie Mc Lean and Eve Turner. Dr. Josie is one of the three co-founders of the Climate Coaching Alliance, or CCA for short, and part of CCA Australia. The former president of ICFA Australia, Josie is passionate and deeply concerned about the future we all face as the wicked interlocking collection of crises facing the humanity today is unfolding. She works with a vast variety of people and organizations, but they all have one thing in common. They too are future oriented and share her concern. Her focus is on cultivating environments where learning, dialogue, and a shared sense of purpose thrive, thus enabling organizations to adapt and flourish in the face of complexity and its accompanying uncertainty. Eve Turner is a coach, supervisor, researcher, and author, and has been involved in setting up three communities: the Global Supervisors Network, the Climate Coaching Alliance, and the Sustainability Coaching Coalition, which has 13 professional body signatories representing 3 lakh coaches, mentors, coaching psychologists, and supervisors. Eve has written or co-edited several books, articles, and chapters, and won 10 awards, the most recent being the 2025 Lifetime Achievement Award for Coaching and Supervision from the Coaching at Work magazine and the 2023 EMCC Global Special President's Award for contributions to supervision and society. Hi, Josie. Hi, Eve. Such a pleasure to finally get you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. It's been years since we met, and especially Josie, you in Bangalore, live in person. And that was a conversation that I'll never forget. And then CCA and life just happened. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to have both of you here. Before we get on to CCA and your journeys, I want to know how the two of you were as little girls, where you were brought up, and what were some of the influences over you as little girls. So, any one of you, it's open. You can go however.
Well, Eve, you're slightly older. I hate to say it, so you should go first.
Oh, that's so funny. I think we're just about a year different. I know. I'm the older. I'm the older sister, am I? So I was brought up in the coast of southern England, and I was brought up near a place called Brighton. And one of the reasons it's always been quite well known, certainly in England, is because it's a radical place. And by that, I mean, it has quite a lot of interesting politics. So there are lots of left-wing bookshops. It was a place where, when I was brought up, homosexuality was considered absolutely acceptable. There were lots of clubs where people would go. It was a really interesting place to grow up. And I think that is one of the influences on me, because there were conversations that took place when I was young that I'm not sure would have taken place in other places, in other parts of the country. So I have an interesting family background. Partly my father was a refugee, and partly my mother was very, I would say, right-wing. And so those were different influences. But I think I found myself by the conversations I was able to have where I grew up. And I'm really grateful for that. So, my headmistress at my school may not have liked the fact that I demonstrated against school uniforms. I don't even know why now. But the fact is, I did do that. And I was on the front page of the newspapers, and I did get called into the headmistress's office. But I think it was just that ability to question everything. And also because of the sort of place it was, one of the really early influences on me was I loved animals, and I really struggled with how we treated animals. And so I knew about how shampoos were tested, on bunnies' eyes, on rabbits' eyes, and things like that. And that really worried me, and I couldn't defend that. So it influenced a lot of what came later. But I think I found out of that because of where I lived. So I think for me, it's a really good question, an interesting question. But what about you, Josie?
Oh, I've learned a lot about you, Eve. And I'm just thinking about the contrast between the way that I was, or where I lived as I grew up. So I was born in Whyalla, one of the few people that will probably admit to it. So Whyalla is a small regional city in South Australia. And it was a steel mill and shipyard city. So I grew up in a desert next to the coastline with abundant prawns and whiting. Like I'd go fishing with my dad, and it was like going to a shop to get what you wanted to eat. Well, we'd go over there and get some crabs, and we'd go over there and get some whiting. Go over there. I thought everyone lived like that. But it was a very conservative place, except it was a radically trade union town in the midst of this very regional farmer sort of territory. So my younger years were not filled with radical discussions. They were filled with sport and fishing and going outside. And my most radical act that I can remember from my childhood was standing up to one of I think it was in grade 7 in primary school, standing up to my teacher, who was an absolute bully. And I said I didn't want to be in the fife band anymore. And I can remember him actually getting me by the shoulders and shaking me. He was so alarmed that I didn't want to be in the fife band anymore. And the more he did that, the more convinced I was that I didn't want to be in the fife band. So I guess that was one of my first standing up to power type experiences. But I was actually a very compliant child, all in all. Like I learned the lessons about being a good girl, and I learned them pretty well. And I escaped from Whyalla to Adelaide to go to university, which is when I discovered the world of politics, and I loved it. So, that was a different thing entirely. I had 2 brothers around me, so I didn't understand the world of women very well, except for the women that I played a lot of sport with. And I was probably more influenced by my dad than my mum, I think. Yeah. He was a bit of a thinker, my dad.
I mean, it's really interesting because I've also learned things I didn't know about you, Josie. But
I played the fife.
Yeah, exactly, amongst other things. But, one thing we do have in common, which I didn't know before, is we were compliant. I mean, I know I may not have sounded compliant, but I was pretty compliant because we didn't have a lot of money, and I actually got a scholarship to what would be called in England, it's called a public school, which means it's a fee-paying school, but I got a 100% scholarship. And I was incredibly compliant there because I just studied, and I went home and I just studied because it was quite hard for me to keep up. So I was very compliant in that sense. but I think just my weekends were a bit radical. And as I say, I'm grateful for that.
This is so interesting, Eve, especially when you know where to balance the radical side of you as much as the compliant side of you. And Josie, the compliant side of you who followed all the rules and was a good girl, to the one who said no because a teacher was a bully. So this is amazing how you both have balanced it out. Traces of that visible even now with the interactions that I had with you. But then, as you grew up and the world changed, like Josie said, Eve, yours was completely a different kind of an open society, while Josie was in a conservative place.
Oh, yeah,
So,
you wouldn't have been trans or anything like that in Whyalla.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as you were growing up, Josie, you said politics interested you. And it's very evident even now, whether it comes to policies and shaping and reshaping of them with the climate in mind, is something that's so close to your heart. But when it comes to the planet Eve, what is it that drew you? What were your subjects as you were growing up that made you understand that the earth, the planet, politics, policies, all are pretty important for us?
I think I've always been quite political. And when I say that, I mean, in some ways, it's because my mother used to make me go and deliver leaflets for her party, which was never going to be my party, but she used to make me go and deliver leaflets. So from a very young age, I understood that politics was important and it had a role to play. I can remember when I was 6 or 7 being asked what I wanted to do with my life. Oh, it's one of these places where you went and sang or performed on a stage, it was a kids thing. And I said I wanted to be a vet and, look after animals. But then I realized that there was more to it than that, that actually part of that could be quite upsetting. And so that wasn't going to be what I did. But I think, and I can't explain why, I just always had this sense that animals and other creatures were really important. And so that would have been my first link. And from a very early age, I didn't want to eat meat. I didn't want to use any makeup or any products that were tested on animals because I understood what that meant. So in that sense, I just felt we should treat others the way we wanted to be treated. And I would say that was my first link. And that's an abiding link because that hasn't changed to this day. And I remember how hard it was when I was young. My mother didn't believe in vegetarianism or, what was that? And, you're talking about 60 years ago, and she didn't make it easy for me to be vegetarian. But I worked on it because, that was the link. And, I've always loved the sea and I've always loved natural things. And I've always found walking in nature, what can I say? I mean, just that, well, even just taking that breath, so I've always had that sense. But I think from a young age, I can't say more than that because that would be over egging it. But that huge respect and belief that we had no right to treat other creatures any differently. So I'll just stop there.
Okay. And Josie, politics and climate and nature, where did they all find a common point of meeting?
I think probably my childhood going out fishing with Dad, and then as I got older, it became really apparent that the fish were being overfished and the stocks were declining. So that was a concern. That was one of my first observations of the world changing around me, I suppose. And I would have been in perhaps high school when I realised that. At the same time, I had to do a geography project for my very last year at high school. And I think my dad must have been a bit of an environmentalist without ever saying those words, because we had to do some original research. And my dad was an industrial chemist, and he worked at BHP, so the steel yards that we could see from our back steps in our house. And each day you would see the dust from the coke ovens and places like that actually moving across the town and settling. And I was talking to Dad about it one day, and I said, oh, it'd be interesting to know where that dust ends up and the harm that it does. And so I actually made that my project, and Dad leaked the data to me. I don't know if he ever got into trouble for it or not. It became my assessment that had to be assessed on a statewide basis, so other people read it. But it actually tracked the movement of that dirt across the town and the impacts that it had on people's health, or tried to, it was only year 12. But that, I think it's been from a more direct experience sort of level that my interest has been. I am to this day really skeptical about the role of politicians in our lives and how much influence they actually have. I'm not sure that they do. And so people say to me, oh, do you know so-and-so politician, or do you know so-and-so politician? I'm not even interested in meeting up with them, because to me, they're mostly irrelevant. Now, that is extremely naive, because they do create the environment, the social conditions that we live in, whether they're good or bad. But I just I don't know why we call them leaders, quite frankly. They are more like followers to me, and they just follow where the crowd takes them. And their only ambition seems to be to stay in power. And I know that's a really cruel thing to say for the one or two people that do something different. But the system doesn't create a very useful response to the challenges that we have, the political system, I mean. So I'm fairly skeptical about politicians.
Yeah, that's evident. And I'm sure now the world over, people understand what you say is actually the truth. They hardly do anything which is for our welfare. It's more following the trends and whatever is popular, whatever makes them popular. And people have understood the dirty game behind politics also, thanks to social media, in a way, because there are a lot of people who speak the right things online, and people are getting influenced rightly, as much as we have the other side. But then when you came in with this skepticism, where did the two of you meet? Where did you all realize that you have a common point, and the earth, the planet, nature is your main agenda? How did that happen? Because that gave birth to CCA, which was such a beautiful movement that happened during COVID. So I would love to know where and how the two of you met.
Well, I can remember where
You
we
want to
met.
take that up here? Yeah.
Well, I think we both have to answer that. But we met in Adelaide, and because I have family there, and I visit there quite a lot. I have a niece who lived in Adelaide who I'm very close to. And when my sister, her mum died, I just decided I should go and visit her regularly, as her mum used to do. And so I contacted somebody and said, do you know any coaches in Adelaide? And for some reason, they connected me with Josie. And so I think we first met
It was
something
Tony
like
Grant, I think, wasn't it?
It was the late lamented Dr.
The
Tony
late and
Grant.
great, we should mention.
He was absolutely, absolutely. And I think we met in 2011. So, it's going back 15 years now. And, we didn't instantly become best buddies, but because obviously it's more difficult when, you're living 10,500 miles apart, but we maintained the meeting together. And I can remember us walking around the Botanic Gardens together.
Oh, after you got off the plane, you were so jet lagged.
I wasn't drunk, I was just jet lagged. But we obviously had common cause. I mean, I think Josie, it was someone I really respected and was incredibly moved by the work she was doing, actually. That would be true. And then quite separately, I knew Dr. Ali Wybrow, who obviously sadly passed away 3 years ago. And so that's how we all met. But let's hear Josie's recollections. Josie?
Oh, well, that's what I recollect too. I mean, one of my first memories of you was having coffee somewhere up in Blackwood, I think, after being connected by Tony. And Tony would have remembered me from very early days of the coaching industry here in Australia when I was involved in setting up ICF, and Tony could think of nothing worse. So he used to throw rocks at me all the time. But we were good friends, nevertheless. Yeah, and I think just really impressed by your intellect and caring for the world around you. And we just became friends gradually over time, I suppose. My interest in sustainability, and I've written about this before, and I'm sure you've heard the story, so I won't labour it, but that actually came from a coaching conference and an epiphany I had talking to John Whitmore at one stage. And so that moved me into doing some work, some research within an organisation here around how do we transform an organisational culture so that it recognises its interconnectedness. So how do we make that paradigm shift from sort of mechanistic thinking to seeing the interconnections and recognising that we can't control everything. And so that was what I saw as the cultural shift necessary for sustainability. And I think I probably spoke way too long and at far too much length, probably bored Eve witless.
Maybe even I know the epiphany moments, but for the benefit of those who are meeting you for the first time, can you share what it is that shifted your entire, because there are coaches and there are coaches world over, but there's something in your journey that made your coaching journey itself pivot into a different direction. So can you share that moment?
So I think this was at our second coaching conference in Australia, and I was president of the ICFA, so the ICF in Australasia at that time. And I'd invited John Whitmore out to speak with us because we were mostly very US orientated, and I thought it would be healthy if we had some other views. Tony Grant always also thought it would be really healthy. And so I invited John out because he was seen as one of the grandfathers of coaching, if you like, and, you know, his links to Tim Galloway and performance coaching. And so he gave his presentation, and we were just sitting afterwards, and we were talking about some work that he was doing in the Middle East. And it was around creating desalination plants that most recently the US has been blowing up. But nevertheless, and he just offhandedly said there'll be war over water one day, you know. And in that moment, I cannot explain this experience. Like, it was just, surreal. Everything just went black. Either the universe collapsed into me or I exploded out into it. I don't know which happened, but there was nothing except I couldn't hear anything. It was just me. And in those moments, it felt like minutes, but it was probably only a few seconds. In those moments, it was like every cell in my body kind of just realigned. And I emerged back into the room where I was talking with John, and he was just talking to someone else. And I thought, they're going to notice that I wasn't here. But no one did. They were just continued talking. And I realized that humanity was on this trajectory towards something catastrophic. Like, I had this real feeling of dread in me. And I can put words to that afterwards, but at the time it was just catastrophic, that I couldn't explain and I didn't understand really. But that has shifted what I've done ever since. Like, when you've had an experience like that, it haunts you till your grave, I think. You can't not do something about it. And it's not that I resent that, but it is tiring. It has cost me friends. It has helped me make other friends. Yeah, that led me to my PhD, but it also was influential around some coaching that I was doing within one of the mining companies at the time when I emerged, and I realised that they were just extracting everything from everyone. And I thought, I can't do this anymore until I find a better way, and I'm not going back till I find a better way. So that was quite influential in what I chose to do.
That's so beautiful. And Eve, when Josie was going through this, were you part of her conversations and discussions, or were you going through your own journey of finding where and how nature and coaching can come together?
Well, I mean, I think what Josie has described is something incredibly profound. And I can't say I've gone through that moment. Although it is interesting that I remember going to sessions that Sir John Whitmore gave in the UK in around 2008, 9, 10, and being very influenced. And also, I chose to do a master's degree in coaching and development, and it was taught by his former wife, Lady Diana Whitmore, and Hetty Einzig. And the way that was taught was very different. I'm also married to someone who's a transpersonal practitioner, and this idea of connection between everything is something I've been very conscious of for a long time. So I can't say I've had that experience that Josie said. I think, there's been an awareness of it and an alertness to it, but I think the moment for me when I thought, okay, it's time to do something, was really in 2019 when Zoe Cohen, Ali Wybrow, and Linda Aspey published their open letter to the coaching profession, including the professional bodies and the trainers, and asked what were we doing while, the planet was under threat. And that open letter can still be found. It was written on LinkedIn. You can still find it if you put in open letter to the coaching profession. And I mean, of course, I by then I had all sorts of thoughts. Josie was doing her PhD, and yes, I had exposure. One of the people I work quite closely with is Peter Hawkins. So, there'd been lots of work going on. But I think the moment when I decided it's time to do something was when I saw that. And so you could say from that, the Climate Coaching Alliance was born, the CCA. And obviously I knew Ali through work I did in the UK. So I knew her quite a bit. I knew Josie, and for some reason I thought, I think it should be the three of us. And so I remember November the 14th, 2019, we had our first meeting. And that was really when the CCA was born.
You remind me of Margaret Thatcher's very famous quote that if you want something done, give it to women. So all three of you, including Alison, who I really, really love for the way she really breathed the cause and how much she spoke for the cause. And both of you, Josie and Eve, you got down to do something. And it was so opportune because the world suddenly collapsed into one small bubble because of one little virus that put us all together. And the way you people brought coaches from world over to get to the conversation, from that open letter to the conversations that happened. And I remember that 24-hour, the sheer courage of going ahead and doing a 24-hour conversation on Zoom was magical for me because I was part of it. But to even conceive and think of something like that was
Eve's ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
I just want to know what went through your head when you were thinking of all of this. What is it that you wanted to achieve? Thanks to the three of you, Alison, you, and Josie. What were you thinking when you put us all together for the conversation?
I mean, I obviously I'd love to hear what Josie says. I think for me, I did a lot of work through Zoom anyway. And that had been going on for some years because I was working globally rather than locally. So it wasn't new to me to be doing things in that way. And I think just this real desire to bring in everybody to the CCA, wherever they were, whatever their circumstances, which of course is why from the very start, it was always going to be free for people to join and free for people to attend. That was hugely important because that respect that people have different backgrounds, different resources, what's available to them. I mean, we didn't want to leave anybody out. And so I think our not wanting to leave anyone out was this idea of let's go through 24 time zones. That was interesting because we chose to do it in March when time zones change. We didn't counter.
Don't
Honestly,
ever have that idea again, Eve.
that was so difficult because then America, their time zone changes before Europe's, and Australia's is after, and New Zealand's is after. It was a bit interesting. Let's just say that. Go on, what's your memory, Josie?
I mean, what I loved about the idea, other than the ridiculousness of it, and I'm just teasing you, don't you? Was that it was so inclusive, which is a hallmark of you, Eve, like inclusive and networking, connecting people. I think the other thing that was really important for me about it was that it wasn't about us grandstanding. We put other people on the stand and put them in the spotlight, not ourselves. And that was something that we continued to always do. So it was about trying to activate people, trying to engage them to do something and think differently. And we didn't know what would happen. Like, we really didn't know. And if you can imagine the three of us trying to work together, like Eve and Ali over in the UK, and me asleep while Eve and Ali are doing everything, the work was not distributed evenly. Eve and Ali did much more of it than I did. They were better connected into a lot of the coaches globally than I was. Like, I knew some from my roles here in Australia, but I live on the other side of the world that's asleep, So so they did a lot of the hard yakka, and also through their connections were able to find two people in each one of those 24 zones to host the calls, and then had the wisdom to say, oh, we need to provide a really nice structure for that and for these calls, and we wanted each call to be the same, like so that everyone as they went around the world would have, we thought, the same experience. But what we didn't realize is that the world always turns out differently, doesn't it? And a gorgeous thing happened. The conversations actually evolved over the calls, and there were some people that sat on and sat in, half a dozen, like they might have stayed for 6 hours at a time as they watched the call go round the globe, and it was always handled slightly different by each of the pairs that presented, and it was just the most fabulous experience. I can remember hosting the first call that started in New Zealand, I think, and I think Ali got up to join me, or was it you, Eve? Someone did anyway. We always made sure that there were two of us to help and there were two managing the call. But it was the most brilliant experience. Like, I think it caught us all by surprise how much love came onto the calls and how you could feel it, how intimate it was, how welcoming, and it was just a space that people didn't want to leave. And I think that's become a hallmark of the CCA, that space that is opened up when people with open hearts and open minds get together for something greater than themselves.
And I think that because of the way we set up the CCA, which was come and be part of this, no matter where you are in your thinking, where you're working, just come and be part of the conversation. This sense of accepting people where they were and not trying to make them anywhere. You know, not trying to say you should be at this point in your thinking or that point in your thinking. And that's why the model we've used is very collaborative and inclusive, in that we wanted everyone to get involved and to just, I suppose, talk to each other, learn from each other, and do what they could do in the way that they could do it without expectation.
I think the key there is without expectation. I think that was the hallmark of CCA, that everybody puts ourselves in there without expectation, because the cause for which we are speaking and propagating is something which is bigger than us. And it is not about us at all. So I think that is where the beauty got transmitted through the messages that went then on through the CCA. So looking back, even Josie, any of you can start from the way you conceived the entire journey of the Climate Coaching Alliance to how it then proceeded. Was it something that you saw sustained, or once things were opening up thanks to COVID moving away and life getting back to what it was, did you notice any shift in people that you were talking to and the response that you were getting?
I think the beginning of the CCA and the pandemic was a happy circumstance in a way, because we wanted it to be global. And then along came this opportunity where everyone was locked down and they were looking for folk to talk with. Like, I think we did one of the very first global calls around China in lockdown, and with some coaches around what that was actually like to be locked in. But we were all curious, what's that like? I guess we're going to find out. So the timing was ripe, I think, for what we had in mind. And then as COVID went away and people really got sick of looking at each other on screens, you know, we started thinking about how can we create places where people can get together face to face. The CCA, I think, was born of the internet and probably will always be a part of it. I personally did not have a view of the CCA being around for a long time. I sort of viewed it as something that I would call it an experiment or an intervention into the system that I thought maybe a few years would do it if we were lucky. But other people have chosen to keep it going, which is, you know, that's fine. I think that's beautiful, but that's not what I foresaw. I wasn't interested in setting up a new body. I was interested in seeing how we could influence the professional bodies or the training bodies that would then carry the work forward, because we didn't have the resources to do it, really.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think for different reasons, people love the community that the CCA has become, and the connections and the different pods, as they are called, that exist. You know, everything from by language, by geography, by subject. And it's become a very rich place for people to gather together and to share. And I mean, I think to some extent I did have the same thought as Josie, that I hoped it didn't need to be there and that it would have done its role. But I can also see that people really like those connections, you know, people meeting together to talk about nature and coaching, or to talk about compassion and its role in the world. And yeah, so I think I see that it does have a role. Personally, I've wanted to be involved with things that would bring in the professional bodies. And so I've been involved quite heavily with something that started as, I don't even know if I can remember what the letters stand for, but the JGSG, the Joint Global Statement Group. So in May 2020, some of the professional bodies wrote a statement about climate change, and that was published, and then other bodies were invited to join. And the original 5 were APAC, the ICF, APEX, where I was then chair, the EMCC, and the AC. So there were 5 bodies, and a statement was published. And that body has now become the Sustainability Coaching Coalition, which I'm much easier to remember, SCC. And the statement has been updated. Interestingly, I think the statement's update is much more true to what we've been talking about, in that it talks more overtly about the links with sustainability, with economics, with social elements, because that idea of connection is so true in the world we're living in. You know, when we talk about the climate and the challenges that we're having as a world with the climate, those are end products of so many other choices that as a civilization, as humanity, we've made. It's not an end in itself. So I've been very pleased to work with those professional bodies, but I still think there's so much more work to do, not because I believe people should be forced into anything, but just wanting to touch people's thinking, to think systemically. You know, is coaching just about me being in the room with you, Rashmi, and, you know, what do you want? But actually, how does this connect with other things that are going on in the world? What does the success of your company mean in relation to how the world's changing and how you might recruit future staff, or the markets you might go into, the resources we might draw on? And I just think that connection for me is hugely important.
Yeah, I really like how you said it's not an end in itself. And I think that's what systems are all about. It's not ending at one point, but just getting something out of it and moving further into something else even more beautiful. And I think that's what the two of you stand for. So where are you seeing your journeys now together at this point of time and as we progress further? Both of you are prolific speakers, writers. So your books to your credit, you've done some yeoman service to both coaching and to the space of making a difference with climate. So where are you seeing your steps now?
Well, we remain good friends, although we don't talk as often on Sunday mornings as we used to.
That's very true.
Oh, yes.
I think it is possible we might write something together, although, you know, the world keeps changing around us. I'm very keen to take my work to those organisations and communities that are trying to change things at a landscape level, because I think regenerative work is what's required. So I've kind of given up, if you like, on the work in organisations like large corporates. I don't know if that's fair, but it seems fair when they're still talking about holding on to 1.5. It seems a little bit outdated in their views. But, you know, at the same time, getting older, energy changing, health changing. I never used to have to think about my health, and I've thought more about my health in the last few weeks than I have ever before. And so, you know, it's like life always. You don't know what's around the corner, really. I don't know where it's leading me, Rashmi.
Yes, I mean, I have a lot of desire to do more writing, but I also have to be, I suppose, alert to what is possible. In the last 18 months, I've been diagnosed with an incurable cancer, and I have chemo every week, and I've had a transplant. And so what I'm able to do is definitely physically less. But I suppose that's one of my life lessons. You know, I just have to think, where do I spend my energy? Because my energy has, if you like, reduced. So where can I spend it? And spending it on the positive things, the things I can do something about. And to some extent, that has to be carrying on with my work with clients. And that's partly a very practical thing because I'm paying for my treatment. And yes, I would love to do more writing. I'd love to see Josie more, but I'm not allowed to travel. So I can't even see my son who lives in Australia. I can't see my new grandson who lives in Australia. and my daughter-in-law, can't see my niece, can't see my lovely friend. So I think, one of life's lessons is for me is to accept where we are and not spend energy worrying about the things you can't do something about. I hope I have another book left in me, and I certainly have a title and a plan. But what I'm not going to do is give myself a hard time about it, because I just know. I mean, it was so funny when Josie said earlier she thought I was intellectual. Really, really. Oh, come on! But now I feel
You're
that
intelligent.
my intelligence, my intellectual grasp, is reduced in what I'm capable of. But I accept that, and so, well, carry on doing what I can do. Very supportive of things like the CCA, definitely the SCC, wanting to be involved in that, because the idea of professional bodies coming together, collaborating, connecting, and doing it in such a generous way without competition, actually just 13 professional bodies just coming together. I think that's very important. So, it's about choice of where the energy goes.
I think that is such a great point to end on. And I just wonder, that really strikes home with me, that reflection, Eve. Over the last few years, I've been at climate and sustainability practitioner conferences, and it's become almost a practice to ask people how they're feeling. These technocrats that apparently never had feelings before. But, tiredness, overwhelm, exhaustion is par for the course now. And I think it's par for the course for many of us. And so thinking really, it's pausing and really thinking carefully about where will we choose to use our time and energy and resources is so important. And I think maybe you've hit upon the little pattern that is everywhere at the moment. And really grateful for it. Thank you.
And now that you brought life lessons, maybe I'll ask you that question. Life lessons that both of you have. And Eve, since you're the older one, we'll go with you.
I'm not going to be allowed to forget that one.
So, 3 life lessons that you would like to leave us with that have been your beacon.
Well, I think I've mentioned the first one, which is so important, to just be choiceful. And I'm always reminded that if I spend my energy on negative things, on what I can't do something about, then I have less to spend on what I can do something about. So that has been such a powerful life lesson for me through my cancer and through how I accept it and how I work with it. I hate it when people talk about battling with it and all those fighting words. Actually, I live with it and I try as much as I can. I don't want to say in harmony with it isn't quite the right word, but it's there. So just work with it and be accepting of it and spend my energy where I can. I think another life lesson for me, and in part Josie has taught me this, it's about being true to ourselves and being authentic, but it's about doing what's right for us. So for example, when it comes to climate work, we might all be active. What that means for each of us might be very different. It might be who we choose to work with. It might be to choose to demonstrate. It might be to choose to write. It might be to choose to think carefully about what we do in our private life. It might be talking to neighbours, getting involved in communities. There's not one way to do something. So let's find the right way for us. There isn't a right way. And I think that acceptance and that belief. And I think the other thing is, And again, I think about Josie when I say this. The earth has so many lessons for us, and just to be open to them. Some of the amazing things I find out about how the earth works, how the world works, and how nature works, I'm constantly being enthralled. And so just being open.
I'm glad you went first, Eve, because I've been jotting notes here.
Oh, that being old a bit.
Difficult question. Life lessons, gee. I think one of the most powerful life lessons for me most recent has been my faith in the power of life itself, like life as a force. And I get very tired of the call for everyone to have hope for a better future, because I think it's fairly certain that our future is going to be rocky, the immediate future anyway. But just because I don't have hope for a better future doesn't mean I'm not active, and doesn't mean that other people aren't active. And I think it's that faith in the pure power of life, the creativity of life, the life force of life, which I really first got a glimmer of in doing that time walk. Do you remember that app that we had when we were writing the book, Eve? I did several of those over consecutive days, and I was really struck, gee, the power of life to break through on this planet from no life to life. Like, can that ever be reversed? I don't think it can. I think regardless of what happens, life will win. I don't know how, I don't know when, but life will see through. So that's one of the things that's been really huge for me. And I don't feel anxious about the future at all. I just completed a survey online that spent 15 minutes asking me about all the things I feel anxious about. I actually don't feel anxious. I feel grief. I feel all sorts of things, but I don't feel anxiety about it. I don't fearful. I don't fear. I don't feel fearful even. I guess one of the other things is not to overplan, not to overthink, just make your decisions, run with it. You can always change them. You can try something different if it doesn't work out. Who knows how it's going to work out, really? Just give it a bash, which goes with my other life lesson when we first came together. And I said, I don't know if I can say that in public, so I won't. I think the third one that I'd share is like I've always been fairly analytical in my thinking. And I think one of the really big things the CCA has taught me that perhaps was a lesson hard learned was it's not actually what you know that counts. It's not the thing that makes the difference. It's how people feel in your presence that makes the difference. And so that's been a big lesson too.
And I just want to say, Rashmi, one of the lessons is there are so many amazing people in this world like you. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
Like Josie. And it's easy sometimes to forget that. But there just are so many amazing people wanting to do good.
It's nearly everyone, really, isn't it? Like, we're all amazing.
When I was listening to both of you, I was thinking that I skipped a question, which normally I ask as part of my last two questions. One was about the pandemic and then the life lessons. But in both your cases, I think in this conversation, the pandemic was more a blessing since it brought so many of us together closer for a cause that was so important at that point. So I think you taught me only positive in the pandemic. You taught me to look at life very differently. And both of you, with your individual energies, coupled with Alison's amazing smile and her beautiful way of putting things together, I think I've learned the maximum out of the pandemic thanks to the three of you. So that's why I didn't even go there, because it was only positive in your cases when it came to the pandemic. But your life lessons, well, pragmatic, absolutely doable, and a very powerful line that emerged when both of you finished your life lessons was, I am enough as I am. And I think that's what makes you beautiful, amazing women that we need around us. And when we talk about empowerment, well, you walk, talk, and live empowerment. So thank you so very much, Josie and Eve, for this beautiful conversation. This month on 22nd, the world celebrated Earth day, but I think you live it every day. So thank you so much for making this such a rich, amazing, and so authentic conversation that you two beautiful women are all about authenticity and being.
Oh,
God bless.
thank you, and thank you for your work in the world too, Rashmi.
Yeah.
So appreciate it. Thank you.
It is an honor having you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. With that, we complete this episode of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know inspirational people whose story needs to be heard. You can write in at rashmi.thirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thirdeye@gmail.com.